Republicans are trying to defuse a bomb and they don't know which wire to cut right now.
The economic cost of Trump's Iran war moved from abstract to painfully concrete. The CPI, that's our basic inflation measure, hit 4.2%, the highest in 3 years. And Trump responded in the Oval Office by saying, "I love the inflation." No, seriously, that's what he said. At the same time, Iran downed a U.S. Army Apache near the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said the U.S. must respond, and oil prices pushed even higher, meaning the war, inflation, and midterm politics are now fully fused.
Look, my problem here is not the bombing and the new escalations. They shot down a helicopter. They're trying to kill American soldiers. My problem is that Trump keeps trying to say there's a peace deal any day. My problem is Trump keeps gaslighting the American people with stories of Iran that is decimated. And with our own two eyes, we see something else. Iran is a threat. Trump started this war. I say start actually doing something to solve the mess that you created. Because right now, Iran is a never-ending story. American lives are at risk. The world economy is on the brink. Gas prices and inflation are threatening to cripple Americans.
There is a huge price bomb waiting us in 6 months as the prices of key commodities that have been strangled off, the supply chains have been strangled off through the Strait of Hormuz, keep escalating as we run down critical inventories. There's no path forward here that involves escalation. The only thing that Trump can do, the only card he really has to play, is to try to find some face-saving way out, because the economic consequences are going to land increasingly on Americans, and it's going to absolutely decimate your party in the midterms.
Donald Trump promised to expose the deep state, but now he's using the FBI, the DOJ, and intelligence communities to try and prove it existed. And the New York Times investigation details how Trump allies pushed prosecutors to pursue a sweeping conspiracy case against former intelligence and law enforcement officials. This whole intelligence weaponization seems to be coming to a brink.
I've worked for several members of Congress, and I can tell you that even if this president and this administration does not take our intelligence services seriously, and they don't take the ultimate mission of protecting America through our intelligence services seriously, members of Congress from both parties do. There is a lack of seriousness about the mission here. And what you're seeing with all of the departures, the expose in the New York Times, all of the pushback is you can call it a deep state. It's not. These are professionals. These are people who have dedicated their professional lives, their service to our country. Don't call them a deep state. These people are trying to defend their mission. There are antibodies at work. And the ultimate thing that's really sad about all of this is we were worried when Trump came back into office that he was going to fire everybody. He tried. He did do a lot of firings. But the other effect is he's making it so unpleasant. He's degrading the mission of these professionals so profoundly that they can't bear to stay. And so as they leave, there are fewer and fewer people who actually care, who actually want to uphold the law, left to defend the system. If anything, the situation is getting more dangerous.
The other issue that everybody needs to pay attention to here is that he is slowly degrading the trust in institutions. And you're slowly degrading the trust in that intelligence, and you're slowly degrading the trust on what the Department of Justice and FBI and DNI should be at this point in time.
When Donald Trump was presented with normal questions in the course of an interview with Meet the Press, from which he walked out, stormed out, head exploded his way out. After host Kristen Welker pressed him on false claims about January 6th and his claims about rigged elections, it's not just a media spat. It's part of a larger pattern where Trump treats basic factual challenge as betrayal, as some kind of an affront to him, as some kind of an attack. And his allies immediately turn that fragility into yet another attack on the press.
It looked like his head was exploding. And then the patronizing, "We're done, dear." It just crossed the line.
He didn't call her piggy. He's improving.
That is true. He is getting better with how he patronizes people. But what's going on here is it is all part of this pattern of taking away institutions so he can try and create whatever alternative reality he wants to. And when people challenge him on that alternative reality, there's only one logical conclusion, is that you must be lying. This must be a setup. As the president of the United States, he should be able to handle basic questions. But that is not the whole story, because it is part of his attempt to discredit institutions. It is a tactic that he is going to continue to use.
I would like to connect the dot to the discussion we had last week about whether Trump really does have a grasp on reality anymore. We presented all kinds of evidence about the fact that he's living in a bubble. We're not sure if he really understands. When he says something like, "Oh, I love the inflation," I'm not sure he actually knows what the situation is. When he talks about the prospects of a deal with Iran, it's unclear whether he really has a grasp on the state of the negotiations, what's actually happening in the war. I think there's a very fair interpretation of this interview and this storm out that he was genuinely shocked. He was genuinely surprised to be presented with any counterfactuals, any challenge to his invented notion of rigging and vote chicanery. I think he was genuinely shocked and befuddled and confused. I'm not a doctor. I'm just reading what's on his face.
And one of those things that set off this temper tantrum was the California primary, where Trump started calling it rigged and he was pressed on evidence. There's no real surprise in a city where the GOP registration's, I think, 18, almost 19%, that the Republican MAGA candidate was going to come in last. That should not shock anybody here. And it is certainly not a sign that things are rigged. To me, this sounds like a preview of a playbook we're going to see in November.
Of course, it's a playbook we're going to see in November. Look, Democrats have run the machinery in California for decades. Come on, guys. You've got to count faster. We're at a point politically and culturally where certain things we just can't joke about. I'm not talking about woke humor and cancellation. I'm talking about the fact that it just feeds into these kinds of narratives when it takes you 5-6 days to count, and it just opens the door. You can't take this long to count because Trump is going to jump all over it and invent some new conspiracy theory. Of course, he's going to do the same thing with the midterm elections.
The election integrity is key. We need to know that the outcomes are right, they're safe, they're secure. And when it does take that long, it does create an opening. I am already hearing the playbook for this year is, and you see it right now, Republican and Trump allies are saying, we're going to win the midterms. They're showing me maps. They're showing me revised Cook stuff. What it does is it sets up that dynamic that when we lose, there must be some other excuse. It also becomes a fundraising machine for Trump from day one. And this becomes Exhibit A. When California takes this long, it becomes the proof that later what is happening when we do lose is probably because of some sort of fraud.
Matt, my father once told me about Madagascar syndrome. That's where you have an awkward tryst with someone, and the next day you're like, "Ooh, would you maybe go away somewhere like, how about Madagascar?" That's the way the entire Democratic Party felt about Jill Biden's new book. She's on tour and is reopening Democratic questions about Joe Biden and 2024. Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's new reporting on Trump and Epstein also shows a White House consumed by panic. That's a book that Democrats are welcoming. But I want to focus on the Bidens. This is a painful chapter. I have made the case before in my writing, and I'll stand by it, that the first 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency, we know this by the numbers. It was one of the most productive legislatively in the history of America, certainly in the last 100 years. And a lot of that legislation was bipartisan. The CHIPS Act, investing in infrastructure, some of the steps that Republicans and Democrats agreed we needed to save the country economically in the wake of COVID. And so he has a legacy that he can be proud of. And then there was the last 2 years that didn't go so well.
I hope that Jill and Joe Biden spend all of October in every Barnes and Noble, in every swing district. It hurts Democrats when he starts to show up again. You also have Jill Biden saying things like, "Oh, I thought maybe he was having a stroke during that debate." This idea that she never saw him that bad when all of America saw him that bad. So I think the more the Biden show up, the more it's going to hurt Democrats. But if we're being honest here, the New York Times book pulls Epstein back into this conversation. It's like Republicans are trying to defuse a bomb and they don't know which wire to cut right now. You still have the economy. And so as much as the Biden books and Biden showing up again is going to remind people that Democratic Party lost, the reality is their pocketbook, their checking account, their bank account are going to play a bigger role in it. It's going to be Biden, go away, stop talking. Trump, you're even worse right now. That's the danger for Republicans, is looking at Biden through a lens that may actually give him a little more credibility given everything that's happening in the world today with Trump. Inflation's
Well,
up, it's been in 4 years.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. All I'll say on the Biden angle is that it's an odd quirk of psychology in the US that we love our presidents to go away and
Yes.
do something else. Jimmy Carter wrote the playbook for here's how you have a successful post-presidency. You go do something else that's meaningful. People love to see you over there. People even don't mind George W. going off and painting. Oh, you've got a project? Great. We're really happy with you. Obama, when has he had a misstep? When he did that podcast with Bruce Springsteen, no one wanted to hear it. No one wanted to see it. We love to see you pop up at the NBA All-Star game. We can cheer you. That's great. We love you. Now go back over there. This is so well known. It's such a well-documented dynamic in American voter psychology. For Jill Biden, for the Bidens, for the advisors around them, not to be aware of that and to time a memoir like this, a self-serving memoir like this, for right now, it's tone deaf, it's selfish. And I wish they would just go thrive, live your lives, do something else. It's the price you pay for the immense power and prestige you get with the presidency.